I don't invest in bonds ever.
Many so-called experts say, if you want your money to be safe, you need to invest in bonds. Well, that's nonsense. Investing in bonds was the single worst financial decision I've ever made, and it's not even close. Just listen to Dave.
I've got a good friend that's a bond trader. It's what he does for a living. And he has taken a bloodbath, just gotten hammered, got both his eyes blacked and his nose broke. I'm telling you, it's bad.
Before I continue my rant about bonds, let's back up a little bit. Okay, what's a bond? It's a financial instrument. No, a debt instrument. Governments, corporations, and other entities sell them as a way of raising money. Let's say I buy a $10,000 bond from the U.S. federal government. These are called treasury bonds. What just happened? Well, I've essentially loaned the government $10,000. It's a loan, so I expect to get my money back. When? That depends on what's called the maturity date. Different bonds have different maturity dates. Okay, the government borrows my money and they promise to pay it all back on the maturity date. Note, you can sell your bond anytime you want, but we'll talk about that later. Is that it? Absolutely not. Lenders always charge interest when you borrow from them. I'm not talking about when you borrow money from your dad, where dad would be lucky to get his money back at all. Forget about interest. But like a bank, we do the same thing when we buy bonds. Whoever we lent our money to, in this case the government, must repay the loan on the maturity date and pay interest each year. If I pay $100,000 for a 10-year treasury bond, the government must pay it all back on the maturity date 10 years from now. In the meantime, if the interest on the bond is 3%, I collect $3,000 a year. Got it? You got this. Let's be honest. Dad probably has a much better chance of getting his money back from the U.S. government than he does from his knucklehead son. As long as the government is still around, it's got lots of money. Heck, it can print money if it wants to. That's why most people say treasury bonds are safe. So, what's the problem? I thought you'd never ask. The problem is bond prices can change just like stock prices. Historically, they haven't moved quite as dramatically as stock prices have, I'll give you that, but the ups and downs are a lot closer than you might think. As an investor, if I'm willing to endure the risks or the lows of a market, then I really want to get paid during the highs. But if bond prices have the potential of falling a lot, just like stock prices can, then are you okay just collecting 2, 3, 4% interest a year? I'm not. Most of us understand when stock prices go up and down, but what causes bond prices to change? 2 words, interest rates. Let's say the interest on our $100,000 treasury bond goes from 3% to 4%. Would you spend the same amount for a bond paying 3% interest as you would for a bond paying 4%? Nope. So the price of that original $100,000 bond must go down for you to buy it. There's an inverse relationship between bond prices and interest rates. When interest rates go down, bond prices go up, and vice versa. Guess what? The holder of the bond paying 3% interest has just lost $25,000. If you don't sell your bond, it's a paper loss, but it still hurts. What that means is, unless you're willing to hold your bond until maturity, in this case for 10 years, don't buy it in the first place. I'd much rather put my money in stocks. Stock prices don't always go up, of course, but at least when they do, I'm likely to get paid a lot more than the interest rates that most bonds pay. The investment game comes down to risk versus reward. If we're taking similar risks, whether we buy stocks or bonds, in my book, you're better off buying stocks. You're much more likely to get paid. While bond prices were falling, and let me tell you, they can fall hard, my money was tied up in bond jail for years, just sitting there, not working for me, while I saw $1 bazillion in paper losses. You want bonds in your portfolio? Buy an index fund. Otherwise, stay away from them.